I'm going to say something maybe wrong, but you don't need to be a sexologist to make love. But you do, right?
Yeah.
So you don't need to be a professional of wine to drink wine.
Yeah.
Yet people are intimidating when they are meeting with wine.
Hi, today we're going to ask the question of what does 500 years of history translate to in the glass? I'm Trent, and we're here on an unapologetically, unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. And we're saying here, drink more, try more, learn more. Now, when most people think about great wine regions, they often do think about Burgundy, Bordeaux, but also Châteauneuf-du-Pape. It's a place shaped by histories and centuries of farming, winemakers and vineyards that has seen more than we could ever imagine. It's behind every historic wine region is real people and a new generation trying to maintain tradition but also look into the future. Today we're heading to one of the historic estates in Châteauneuf-du-Pape called Château La Nerthe. It is a property rooted in history, 500 years of history, and we're looking to see the classic expressions of Châteauneuf-du-Pape and also what does 500 years actually represent in a glass of wine. Today, to lead me on the journey is Roman Aujoulat, part of the younger generation, helping to communicate and represent their state domain Richard. And Roman, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. And nice to meet you, Trent.
As we do with all our guests, we like to break the ice and get to know you a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a few icebreaker questions for you. The first one is there a most memorable wine or most memorable wine moment that you've had?
I have it very well in my mind. So I'm born and raised in the Rhône Valley. My family make wine initially, not this family. And so I always been stick to wine. But the first emotion I had with wine, I would remember, it was out of a wine cellar when I was a young student. And we were tasting wine every day. And I had a Loire Valley wine, Chenin Blanc. And it's like when you the first time met with something, you have those emotions inside of you.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened in my mind with the wine. And I was like, okay, you can get emotions with wine. That's amazing.
Wow.
So that made me even more confident in what I wanted to do at the time, which was I was a student and I always said, I want to sell my dad's wine. And so after that, I was like, okay, I definitely want to be in that industry.
Wow. It's like a passion or love at first sight type of thing.
Yes, exactly.
What was the last glass of wine that you had?
At lunch.
A
few minutes ago when I was doing tastings all day long in Sydney for the first time. Was it
a Château La Nerthe or what was it?
It was Château La Nerthe, was also the Beaujolais from Château that we're having. Actually, at lunch, I was in Divine in Sydney that I highly recommend. Very nice wine list. And Julian, the owner there, poured us several wines and we did a few blind tasting wines from Sicily, from also Australia. And that was very nice. I had a nice Riesling from the South Australia. Was very nice. Yeah.
Okay, next question. A person past or present they'd love to have a bottle of wine with, and what bottle would you pick?
To met with wine, I'd recommend to go with a Côte du Rhône.
Yeah.
I think it's a wine that worldwide, both colors, white and red, are very approachable by the profile, the fruit intensity, the acidity.
Yeah.
And also, if you reflect to what we drink in France, it's a product that is in 80% of any French restaurant. So I think that says a lot on how approachable it is.
And is there a person, past or present, they would love to have that bottle of wine with?
I think with my grandparents. That are not anymore there.
Yeah.
But if you said past,
Yeah.
To meet with them now that I'm a little grown up in my professional career, that would be a great moment if I was able to travel in time.
Next one. Ultimate or unexpected food and wine pairing that you've come across?
Let me think about it, and I'll answer later. Yeah.
Okay. On the line
because I was having one, but I can't tell you right now, but later, yeah.
Just on the line of food as well, what type of food matches with Châteauneuf-du-Pape the best?
For whites, because I think split in two. For whites, I love spicy cuisine, Asian food especially. Southeast Asia spices are a great pairing for whites in the Rhône Valley and Châteauneuf-du-Pape because we have the intensity, the viscosity, the weight to hold, I think, spices. I could go the same also for the reds, but I think also more classical dishes from my region, from the south, stews and more Provençal dishes are very well adapted. And especially otherwise, I'd say by itself. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Next one. Biggest lesson learned on your wine journey?
It's every day a lesson, to be honest, at my age.
Is there a one that kind of stuck out for you?
I'd say every day it's a lesson, but my lesson is to maybe try to cultivate movement and go towards people and don't be afraid of doing mistakes, you know, in the way I could communicate or could engage with wine. We were saying before being in the microphone that, I love doing blind tastings because it's a great way to do mistakes and remember about the wines.
Next one, it might kind of link back into your memorable wine moment, but if you could bottle a moment of your life like a vintage, which vintage would you pick and why?
98.
98.
Yes.
And why?
First, because it's a great vintage. Second, because we won the Soccer World Cup with Zidane.
Yeah.
And third, because I'm born in this vintage.
Oh, fantastic.
So, you know, it crosses or ticks all the boxes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Let's get started. Let's try the first wine.
Okay.
Which is, you can say it much better than me.
I'm going to let you say first.
It's a Château La Nerthe, Le Cassin Côte du Rhône 2023.
Perfect. Yes. Sorry, Trent, because you play a little bit with me with the questions. I was not expecting that. I wanted to play also a little bit, but yes, La Nerthe, Les Cassagnes.
Yeah.
No, you did great.
So tell me about this wine. Is there a story behind this one?
Yes. First of all, cheers, mate.
Cheers.
The story behind La Nerthe, as you mentioned at the beginning, is a long-standing history. It's been 5 centuries that the estate exists, or almost 5 centuries, since 1560s. In Châteauneuf-du-Pape it started, and this wine in particular is not from Châteauneuf, but from Côte du Rhône, which is the regional appellation. That's why I said, because it's regional, large, production as a region, it's easy to meet with that kind of wine. And it's a good introduction for the tasting. And so this wine is a white blend. Yeah.
White blend of what grapes?
In the south of France, or as French, we like and love to make things complicated. But so it's a blend of 5 different varietals. You have Viognier, you have Roussanne, Grenache Blanc, Marsanne, and Clairette. And it's predominantly Viognier. And we do blend also a lot of different grapes because we find it's the best way to find the balance within the south of France. Yeah, 2 wines. Very nice glassware.
It's definitely got more body to this type of white wine. It has a really good acidity coming through it as well, but has this kind of really juicy kind of fruits in it as well. So for this one, what type of foods would you have with it?
I think a good Monday night wine is a Côte du Rhône La Nerthe, so by itself first.
Yeah.
Then you can go with some seafood. Yeah. I love oysters. I know you have great seafood also.
Yes, fantastic.
In
Lobsters as well.
Yes.
Prawns.
So at lunch I had a bug.
Yeah, Balmain bug, yeah.
A risotto bug was beautiful.
Oh, delicious.
Maybe it's a bit bougie what I'm saying, but it was very, very nice. So I guess a beautiful like mushroom risotto with that.
Yeah.
And
this is almost like, it feels kind of rich as a white wine. Like it's kind of like it's oomph in it as well. So delicious. But as we enjoy that wine, I want to talk about your wine journey. So how did you first get into wine? You mentioned your parents were in the wine scene, but then how did you actually get into wine yourself?
Since I'm born, pretty much, I think, because wine in my region and in my family is a commodity product, which means my grandparents were drinking wine every day, or wine was part of the table, such as my dad nowadays. Yeah. He drinks wine out of a water glass, which is not nice like that. It's a Duralex French glassware, and he likes to have his wine like that. So I'll always, been in contact with wine by near every day at the table with my parents. Yeah. And also during the Christmas and holiday celebrations, I was authorized to have 1 finger of red mixed with water. And I was feeling to be an adult, or it was something special.
What age was that?
Very, very young, too young maybe to say it right here. If there is, I don't know, laws in Australia.
It's a French way. It's a French way.
But very young, yes. Yeah. In Champagne, for instance, I'm not from this region, but in Champagne, the growers are born with a scoop, little spoon of champagne right away when they are born. Like they are 1 day old, and the tradition with the growers to give them 1 spoon of champagne. I wouldn't do that to my children if one day I have some, but I found that it's a pretty interesting story on how important wine is to us, in France.
So did you
change it a lot?
Did you grow up in the area of Rhône? So did you always know that you're going to be into working for Chateauneuf-du-Pape wineries, or? Not
at all. I grew up in the Rhône Valley. I grew up there, and I'm still living there. But we're representing a Châteauneuf-du-Pape winery came up 2 years ago. Yeah. When my phone rang from Richard family, and I was like, oh my God, are you sure you want to hire someone that young? I haven't said that, of course, at first. I say, yes, I'm interested.
You're thinking that,
But I was like, oh my God, that's a little intimidating because it's the mecca of wine for the south of France. This village, it represents a lot of prestige and so a lot to carry on your shoulders. And so, no, I was not thinking that I was going to work for such a family and winery and village. And that's something I'm quite proud of myself and of the wines I represent. And so I know it's a huge privilege for me to be every day at the contact of some great wines of the world.
Yeah, we'll delve into the story around Domaine Richard, but before we do that, let's talk about Rhône and Châteauneuf-du-Pape as a region. The first one is, for someone new to the Rhône, what makes Rhône Rhône, also what makes Châteauneuf-du-Pape special as part of Rhône?
The history linked to it, long-standing history for thousands of years, but also...
Since the Romans, right?
Since the Romans, since the Romans pretty much. Yeah. But then I think it's more on the modern history that Châteauneuf-du-Pape has been famous. There is two sort of dates that are important to it. First, the creations of AOCs in France. First AOC in France was Châteauneuf-du-Pape, one of the 5. So we're having those very smart persons that highly anticipated what would be nowadays the market to sanctuarize what should be a Châteauneuf-du-Pape, giving them a lot of rules, for us to respect on how a Châteauneuf-du-Pape should be grown and where, to protect where it was coming from. Because at the time, so almost a century ago, in my small village, which is an hour away driving from Châteauneuf-du-Pape, growers were producing grapes. Those grapes were a lot going to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So, to make maybe some Chateauneuf wines. I'm not saying it happened, but that's what I've heard at the time that was done. So this date was highly important because it helped, control the production and where it was coming from. And then I think even more lately, what was very important as a date was the arrival of a lawyer, an American lawyer, very famous, that ended up being the wine advocate, Robert Parker. His favorite wine region of the world was Châteauneuf-du-Pape. People could criticize him, but I think he helped millions of consumers to meet with wine easily, with ratings and with his taste, and that millions of people followed after. And so he gave big exposure to the village. And thanks to him, I think he made the village quite famous. And before that, the village was of Châteauneuf and their wines were nationally recognized, but not internationally. So I think this guy helped us move international. Even though now he's criticized, but I think a lot of growers should thank him, especially in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, for what he did. Yeah. Personally, I don't have the same taste as him, but I respect what he did for the village.
Okay, so the region, I think, was made famous in Drops of God. Did you watch that?
Yes. A short part also has been filmed in La Nerthe.
Oh, was that actually La Nerthe? Oh.
Yeah, in the first episode, there is 15 seconds that go through a cellar, which is La Nerthe.
Oh.
They booked us for like 2 days, I think, for those 15 seconds. You wouldn't believe, But they showed a part. But no, most of the show is in Beaucastel, Famille Perrin, neighbors.
Okay.
Yeah, friends. Yeah.
Well, one of the famous bits there was when they had to try and recreate a Châteauneuf-du-Pape wine, but doing their own blending as well. And through that, there was, I think, 13 different varieties, right?
Yes.
Why?
18, we can say, but yes.
Why is Châteauneuf-du-Pape special in that way? Other regions, Burgundy is like Pinot Noir or Chardonnay. But for Châteauneuf-du-Pape, why do you have to go to 13?
Because since that time and before, a lot of grapes were used and planted, and it's a bit of these regulations have been used to continue perpetuate a tradition that was already existing in the past. So the message to drive is very complicated when you can talk about certain grapes. But I think what they were very clever and smart at the time is to allow us to use those 13 or 18 grapes, because then we recognize that Grenache can be 3 grapes, so white Grenache, black, and grey, but you can...
I didn't know there's grey.
Yeah, there is also grey Grenache. There is even grey Mourvèdre, for instance. And so there is those 18 grape varieties that you can either blend them all together or use one single varietal to make the wine.
What do you think that adds to it? Is it adding extra complexity, extra layers into it?
I think first, extra freedom. Extra freedom for the growers to do what they want instead of using one grape such as Gamay or Chardonnay, and also to adapt more to climate change. So we are observing within our vineyards that some grapes used to be adapted to our climate, and now we are leaning towards some others that may be more adapted to the next generations. So I think that allows us to be agile in the village, and that's a strength that very few other AOCs have in the country. So that's something we should be proud of. Though 75% of the planting are made of one grape called Grenache. So
let's talk about those. So primarily Grenache. Grenache noir or
black Grenache.
Black Grenache.
75% of the plantings made of Grenache.
And the rest of it is what? Is it?
Then there is Syrah and Mourvèdre. So with those three grapes, you have about 90%, I think, of the AOC's plantings. And then you have a few, the others that are Grenache Blanc, Roussanne.
Do they actually use all 13 in every single Chateauneuf-du-Pape? Or no, it's just freedom to utilize them? Or it's really normally just like Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre?
The thing is that everyone has pretty much the 13 grape varieties in their vineyards because the vineyards are so old. The average of the vineyards is age of a vine in Châteauneuf maybe around 40 years old. So quite old. And at the time when people were planting vineyards, when they were when they were having a vine dead, they were replanting it with something else. So there is a lot of co-planted plots. So in the end, everyone says there is the 13 grape varieties because around a block of Grenache, there is some other vines.
So generally, maybe we can use Château La Nerthe as an example. Do you kind of play to each vintage, or is there like a house blend that you try and work with each year and trying to maintain that style?
We produce only vintage wines. So there is a variation from a vintage to another. That's what we feel is part of terroir. Then you go to Champagne, yes, there is brand or houses that make so non-vintage. I think it's very interesting if you think about the market in the future, but for Châteauneuf-du-Pape, yes, it's vintage, and for La Nerthe also, vintage wines.
Okay, let's move on to Domaine Richard and Château La Nerthe itself. Tell me about Domaine Richard.
So Domaine Richard is a fraction of the activity of the family. The estate of La Nerthe exists since 5 centuries. The estate of Château des Tours in Beaujolais since the 12th century. Long-standing history. And the family initially comes from a backcountry region, one of the least populated regions of France called Aveyron. The same region as my family used to come from 100 years ago. And at the time, so 100 or 140 years ago, the Richard, 140 years ago, decided to leave that region, sort of. And people in France were having two choices. And, internally we're having flux of immigrations. People whether decided to go to the Mediterranean coast to make a better living or to the capital in Paris. And one member of the family started making his way up to Paris. And Aveyronnais, people from that backcountry region, so driven by agriculture at the time, a lot by cattling, having a rough time there. And what they were doing in Paris is that they were carrying water to the apartments, carrying food, doing, the labor jobs. And they started having their own small alimentary shops, the sort of 7-Eleven of the 19th century. And that turned up that they were bringing the coal up to the apartment, the water, the food from their regions, and then the wine, of which at the time was a commodity product and a hygiene product, because people were drinking wine to get up because of their work, but also because of the water,
there's bacteria.
Resources. Exactly. So people were adding red wine to their waters to make sure it's safe also. So people were drinking a lot of wine. Can you imagine? Nowadays, we drink 35 liters of wine a year, roughly, in France, while still one of the number one consumer of wine per capita in the world. The 70s, I think, was 100 liters or something ridiculous, very high. And so at the time, 140 years ago, you can imagine it would have been even more. And so that family came from that background, leaving that region, moving to Paris. And this guy, Henri Richard, started buying wine and selling wine to the restaurants out of barrels. And that's what we called pinardier. So he was sort of doing wine negotiations, And then he was the first to realize that the restaurant were grabbing the barrel and conditioning themselves, the bottles into a bottle of wine. And he said, why I would not bring that service to my consumer, to the restaurant? So he started bottling wine for them. He was one of the first to do that. And so what's very interesting behind our estate is that the family is at the service of restaurants since 140 years by doing wine distribution, mostly in Paris. So we know the market and our consumers quite well in France. And I think that helps us also to be agile or to think about what's going to be drinking in the next generations, while trying to respect as much the place, the sense of each places and each estates that the family owns.
Yeah.
So the family is in the wine distribution for a long time and has also its own estate and of production from the Rhône Valley, from Beaujolais, and also Bordeaux, across 3 regions.
So Château La Nerthe is part of that one, but they also do Beaujolais, which brings us to our second wine.
Yes.
Which is Château de Tours 2024 Gamay from Beaujolais.
Yes.
Fantastic. So this is part of the portfolio Domaine Richard. Gamay is the, I guess, the lost brother of Pinot Noir in Burgundy.
The lost brother? Okay. I called today Gamay. I call it the cousin, yes, of Pinot Noir, the lost brother. Feel a little abandoned, poor Gamay.
It was in Burgundy, right? They got kicked out, right? Into
it's still in Burgundy. Geographically. If you look at French regions, it's part of Burgundy region. But as a wine region, yes, they are separated. So Beaujolais is its own wine region. And I think also the people are different from Beaujolais than Burgundy. But the great thing is that you look also within, like, you look at Burgundy, like Mâcon, which is the nearest sub-regions of Burgundy and to Beaujolais. They are very much looking like Beaujolais people, very hospitable. I'm not saying that the Burgundy people are not hospitable, but they are very nice. But I think the most hospitable winemakers and people of the wine industry, even though I'm not from there, it's all resides in Beaujolais. They have a true sense of hospitality, and I think their wines quite answer very well that also, because they are fresh, very approachable. I call that to be a good breakfast wine. Yeah.
Breakfast wine. What breakfast would you have with this?
A brouilly. Yeah.
What's that? Sorry?
A brouilly, just a brouilly by itself, as a starter of your day.
Okay.
It's a joke. Of course, I'd rather have champagne on the breakfast. Yeah.
No, this is very delicious. I find Gamay a very kind of good food wine. Like, it goes well with anything because it has, sometimes a bit of body like this one. I feel like there's acid to it to cut through any fattiness, like a hamburger or something like that, a burger. But it also has like this kind of black tea type of taste to it as well. So it kind of has that complexity on it. So I would say this one is a slightly more serious type of Gamay. It's not the kind of bubblegum Gamays, but it's something
Beaujolais Nouveau, yes.
Yeah, but it's a bit more of a serious type of Gamay, which is absolutely delicious.
Yes, thank you for saying that about the Beaujolais, because I said it's a good breakfast wine, Beaujolais in general. Don't get me wrong, they make some great wines in the region, such as Brouilly, such as this estate. What I'm saying is that they are very digest, very approachable. And in Beaujolais, this region has been a lot driven by this marketing product that was Beaujolais Nouveau, which on the basis, it's interesting to approach this with, whole celebration. But then I think it hurt also the whole region as a whole. When you think that Beaujolais is the hilliest wine region of France.
Okay.
So, which means hills, which means more labor to produce wine, more cost. They were relying on a business model making entry-level wines, which makes no sense in the end. When you go to the vineyards, you're like, oh my God, why you spend so much energy in selling wines at that low level when you have such terroir? And so now there is a new shift of that, but still Beaujolais has a continental climate, so wines that tend to stay fresher, yes. And you have such a diversity. You have 10 cru, you have also whites. So yes, come in Beaujolais, you'll be always super well welcome. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, we continue on the story of Château La Nerthe. Like we mentioned that it has history dating back to 1560. So that's 500 years. So how has it lasted so long? Is it because it just produces damn good wines, or there's another story behind it?
Because of people's, how you say in English, I don't know, maybe you'll be able to translate entêtement, people were very
it sounds beautiful,
stubborn. It's we tend to say AOCs and those wines are from a civilization's stubbornness, entêtement, because people really wanted to, get or were sure about the potential of what they were doing, and they ended up doing something in the end. So I think that's what happened to Château La Nerthe. And then it's a long-standing history, so if we have hours I could explain, but there is 3 timing of Château La Nerthe. The first one was the Tulle de Villefranche, the one that settled, built La Nerthe, and I think at the beginning they settled there because of they were having access to energy. The main energy was water, and we have a natural spring still going on at the estate that crosses the whole vineyard. That give us constant access to water, or a better access to water from most of our peers, because Châteauneuf, if you close your eyes, it's an environment surrounded by big rolled pebbles. It's a sort of drastic environment for growing vines, and that's what they like usually. So you have less vigorous vines, producing lower yields. And in Château La Nerthe, we have access to water, so that's why also we produce a white wine, because you need to have more water. That's why also we have a lot of Syrah and Mourvèdre, because you need more water. So first of all, the location having access to energy, which was water, and then the stubbornness of the second generation that went to La Nerthe, which purchased the estate after the Phylloxera. Phylloxera appeared in nearby Châteauneuf in Rochefort, and vineyards started being abandoned, such as La Nerthe. At the time, it was the first winery to bottle wine in the village, and the first winery to ship wine. And the wine was shipped in the US at the time already, or what was going to be the US after. And so it says a lot about the footprint that the winery was already having. But then, because of the Phylloxera, the vineyards got destroyed, not only La Nerthe, but worldwide. That's how we ended up having American rootstock plant grafted. And Joseph Ducos, this agricultural engineer, brought La Nerthe and was one of the first of the village to plant American rootstock and grafted plants, in Châteauneuf. And he was a very important person for that, to convince the other growers to do so, because he felt that this was the solution against this disease. And so he allowed us to be first the upfront producers of making wine again in Châteauneuf in the end. And then also he was a key person in building the appellation rules. He created a Ducos recipe, which stands for 10 grape varieties that highly impacted also the laws and the regulations and to the creation of Chateauneuf-du-Pape. So I'd say that those are the 2 first chapters, and the latest is the Richard family buying it in 95. But maybe I'm speaking too much. I can speak.
So it feels like Château La Nerthe and also Chateauneuf-du-Pape go hand in hand. Like they're both part of the history.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we tend to see. If you do a Chateauneuf-du-Pape masterclass, I remember on my first week at La Nerthe, I was right away sent to Vinexpo Hong Kong, and over there the AOC was holding a masterclass of Chateauneuf-du-Pape, and a masterclass to the press, and they mentioned like maybe 10 times Château La Nerthe. We tasted even the wines, but when you talk about the history of the village, you talk about La Nerthe, because the history of both are directly linked. Yes.
Do you ever take all that history for granted?
It depends. We'd love to go deeper, but the best answer for us is when we welcome people at the estate and they realize when they walk through the cellar how beautiful it is and how long in history it is. So that's just something we're proud, but the family and ourselves, because I represent the interest of the family, we try to be discreet and very humble about this heritage. Yeah.
I saw the cellars.
You visited?
No, I didn't visit it, but I just saw in the pictures there. Okay. It looks amazing, like medieval cellars, right?
Yes.
What's something that surprises people when they visit Château La Nerthe?
First, you are by the road and you barely see the estate, the chateau, surrounded by multi-centuries-old plane trees, and you discover this chateau, which came from the left bank of Bordeaux, so which is large. Yeah. But in the end, you walk in, and it's very narrow. Yeah. At the time, the first generation that owned for 300 years or 250 years the estate wanted to be part of the nobility, of the country. So they wanted to be established. So they built something large. Or at the end, because also they were successful. And so first of all, they are surprised, right away when they arrive at the chateau, and then they are even more surprised when they walk in the cellar, because it's very ancient and unique architecture also to see the cellar. as it is.
Yeah, you already told us a bit of the history about Domaine Richard and Château La Nerthe. Is there a story that not many people know that might surprise people about Château La Nerthe?
Yeah, it's a story which I think we could not be proud of it. We are not proud of it, but it's part of history, and I found it very interesting. When you walk throughout our cellars, when Richard family bought the estate in 95, few years after, they discovered few parts of the cellar. One part of which is not scary at all is that we discovered that we have 3 tanks that were made with big rocks from a Roman amphitheatre, from Roman's rocks that are 2,000 years old.
Wow.
And apparently they've been stolen from the Orange amphitheatre nearby.
Oh, yes.
So that's something we should not be very proud of. But the second thing is that during World War II, the Nazis were in the south of France and they held camp in Château La Nerthe. And at the time, the owners sealed and walled a part of the cellar. And Richard family discovered a whole part of the cellar with wine in. And so that's something, interesting to tell also to people when they visit us. And it says a lot on how strategic is even positioned the chateau around the village, And the long story short also about Chateauneuf-du-Pape. Now, Chateauneuf-du-Pape is a castle, the Pope's old castle, sitting on top of the hill. There is just 2 walls left because this was the ammunition reserve of the Nazis that got bombed by the Allies. So yes, it's sad. Yes, we're not proud of, but that's part of our history and who we are. And I think that's always interesting to share.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Richard family bought it in 1985?
95, sorry.
95. Yeah. So over the last 30 years, how have that developed? How has that evolved? What's been the changes in Château La Nerthe?
First of all, they've been having a good nose of it because the international praise came after.
Yeah.
And so they contributed of naturally good exposure from that wine advocate that I mentioned. Also, they picked up on an estate that was not as well taken care. If you look at the pictures, our park, because we have a 10 hectares park protected within the village, so we're not allowed to plant. So that's what's unbelievable. When you arrive, you don't realize that you would expect, or you see everywhere else vineyards planted right up to the doors up front of the winery. But for us, we are nurtured, nestled within because we have a park, a protected land. At the time when the Richard family bought the estate, this park was almost abandoned or was a garden. The vineyard was not very well tended, so they highly invested in building again the vineyard and the winery. And then they were also quite clever on the way to approach the market because they are a wine distributor. Were having a lot of connections to restaurants. And so what they did, which is in the mind of a lot of people from that generation when they were visiting the cellar, yes, it was very beautiful, but they invited all the very famous Michelin-starred restaurants and top chefs and hotels to have their own box within the cellar and own allocated wine and box with the name written in the cellar. And this was very useful to establish, the credits of La Nerthe at the time. Then somebody were visiting the cellar, and I remember the person that I mentioned at the beginning. I worked in a wine store, my first experience where I was having my first emotions with wine. The guy that I worked for, he's in his 50s now, and he told me when I joined La Nerthe, I have memories of it. It was the first winery I visited in Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
Wow.
And I was astonished to see not only the winery but the names of all these great chefs, having their own boxes of wine, and he thought that this was amazing. And so, yes, the family, I think, was quite smart in doing things right in a way to market their wines.
Was there one for like Paul Bocuse as well?
Maybe, but we don't have the name anymore, but maybe. We have 25 different other great names, but not Paul Bocuse, maybe.
We talked about Chateauneuf-du-Pape wines. Generally, I think about reds, but we have a different color in front of me, which is a white. So this is a Château La Nerthe, Châteauneuf-du-Pape 2022 white.
Correct. Yes.
So tell me about a white Châteauneuf-du-Pape. You said that because you have access to water there. You do produce a lot of the white Châteauneuf-du-Pape, maybe compared to other chateaus. What is a white Châteauneuf-du-Pape?
It's something very rare. Across the whole production, which is 97% or 95% made of red, there is just then a fraction of white wine produced. We have 92 hectares, 9 hectares are made of white, so in terms of total production, it's about 15%. So we're quite recognized from our white wine production because we always had a sort of large part of our vineyards that were made of white. Actually, when you first look at the history of our estate, we were at the beginning making only white wine before making red wines in La Nerthe. And so what's special is that we've been making white wine since a long time with consistency, and also we sort of have volumes compared to other producers. And so that's why people recognize us for this product.
Educate me. We mentioned like there's 13 grape varieties that go into red. Does that also apply towards the white, or is it a different rule?
In total, there is 13 or 18 grape varieties that can go to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And for the whites, you have 5 grapes, I think, or maybe more. I'm not sure. Yeah, but there is not the 18 altogether, but there is a good amount. Yeah.
Okay, so we said before for like the reds, it's primarily Grenache or Mourvèdre. For whites, what type of grapes are generally in the white Châteauneuf-du-Pape?
Grenache Blanc, so white Grenache, Roussanne, those are the 2 main grapes for us and for the white Châteauneuf produced. Clairette, it's a growing grape also because of the climate change, and Bourboulenc. I'd say those are the main 4 grapes for whites. Maybe the only, I'm not sure, to be honest. Pardon my age. Yeah.
This is absolutely...
And I'm not from the village also.
This is absolutely delicious. That first time having a Châteauneuf-du-Pape Blanc, the fruit really just comes out and just sings in the glass. And the aromas of it, it's like, white florals, honeys, stone fruits. It smells like what that area kind of looks like in terms of what you're describing as well. Yeah, beautiful.
And also, I think in terms of how the people are in my region, I think we are quite generous. And I think those wines are, intense. We are intense also as a people and generous. So yeah, I love also white Chateauneuf, and I'm very happy that I'm in La Nerthe because we have a lot of white, and I drink a lot of white Chateauneuf from La Nerthe. Yeah.
Just curious as well, what does an aged white Châteauneuf-du-Pape Blanc taste like?
You'd be very surprised. I've been very, very surprised for old white wines from the Rhône Valley in general, and for Châteauneuf even more. And La Nerthe last year, we opened, I remember, a 1992 Château La Nerthe Blanc, and you looked at the color and was having still those almost green, reflects to it, and the wine was still tasting young. You would not believe me that, but it exists like that. Though, because we have high pH, we have low acidity, the more it ages, the more inconsistent each bottles became, because also of our natural corks, we have lots of variation. I tend to say our whites, I prefer to enjoy them when young, up to 5 years old, and after that, they start to sort of mineralize, to lose their fruit character and power, and to have more like nutty character, white truffle, to have less weight also. Which is interesting, but it's a different approach. When young, I can drink a whole bottle, aged, or like most aged wines also, I try to enjoy a couple glass or 1 glass, but that's it. So they age very interestingly, especially the Roussanne also. We use Roussanne. It tends to develop some sort of petrol notes.
Yeah. So we're going to shift towards talking about terroir and also the vineyards as well. So one of the things we always see in the photos is the white pebbles or the white rocks or the galets roulés, is that what they call it? What impact do you reckon that happens into the wine itself?
So terroir, I believe as a whole, is a lot misunderstood. It's a French word, first of all, and the French were hard to understand, I think. We are not even able to understand what we say sometimes. I saw it today.
It's a feeling.
So I think we're hard to get, and that represents very well the French, this term. Terroir, it's not just about the soils, but it's about also the climate. It's about the people behind also. The craft. So in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, if we're talking about terroir, there is such a diversity. First of soils, we have 4 different soils types. We have the big roller pebbles, we have clay, we have limestone, and we have sand. So we have those 3 different soils, and on top of them, they go on top of each other's. So you have a mix also of those soils. Then you have a difference of altitude and elevation, which is quite small, but then you have a difference of facing, and then you have a difference between the growers. And the beauty of Châteauneuf is that this is maybe the last sanctuary in the French wine world, meaning last century is that there is no corporation that entered the AOC. There is no LVMH, no luxury, no big box brands or big box producers, which means there is a diversity of families. And so there is diversity of soils, there is a diversity of 330 different families across 3,300 hectares. So if you combine all these together, on top of that, there is 18 grape varieties. You might think that there is a big, diversity throughout Châteauneuf, which is true. And in the meantime, there is 75% of Grenache planted. So a lot of, I'd say, Châteauneuf, also a lot driven by Grenache, but not La Nerthe, which is interesting.
Yeah. So it's not just the pebbles, it's everything that contributes to the different styles of wines.
And also, just to, if I want, I'd like to just a little bit dig deeper throughout that. The way we've been approaching the market in France is against what's nowadays rules. Creating AOCs in 29 and 36 has been creating a marketing of the offer, meaning here's what we're going to produce, and we don't care about what the market wants. We are going to convince that this is the product you should drink, right? Because we built literally the rules of how to make a Chateauneuf-du-Pape, right? Nowadays, and I think we should be much more agile in the wine industry as a whole, not in Chateauneuf-du-Pape, because we're prestigious, we are demanded, we are a desired brand. But for all those regional regions, we should maybe be a little bit more flexible, or be having, instead of a marketing of an offer, a marketing of the demand, to listen what the consumer wants. But the French were very stubborn again. So we want to convince people that this should be the wine you should drink. So
stubbornness could be both a good thing and also a bad thing as well.
Yeah, but, strength and
a weakness.
And something we need to be cautious.
Okay. The other one is, I saw on the website, on videos, that you have a big push for organic farming. And I saw a thing like sheep kind of around. They've been used as well. Tell me about organic farming and why is that important? How does that contribute to the styles of wine?
Organic farming has been in Château La Nerthe since 1998, certified. I don't talk much about it because it feels that it's part of us now. And it's important in the AOC. I think we're one of the highest organic certified AOC of France. And I'm not going to say we're the best for that. The thing is that the reality is that our climate allows us to do that. We have a lot of sun. We have a lot of also wind. I have not mentioned that, but the wind also is a strong, also part of our
The Mistral
terroir.
winds are here.
Yeah. Exactly, the Mistral, which is the northwesterly wind that blows, dries everything, keeps everything dry. It's important for us, organic certification, because it allows us to, it says we give life back to our soils. That's what it says, because you don't use any herbicides. It's like we prevent, in the way we approach the vineyards. We're not curating. We're not using strong medicines. Is it something I trust 100%? No. I'm not the owner, but I think because we have the climate for doing that easily, we do. In Beaujolais, in our other property, we are not, because the climate is different. But we've seen that with this climate change happening, very unpredictable weather, and so the last few years have been quite challenging, or from a year to another, the yields have been very different. And I think those regulations, more and more, we are the professional of that in France. Okay, no worry about that. I know we are the best in the world for that, but I think we should temper a bit. And I think, yes, in the south of France, it's well adapted, but I think it's not maybe very rational to make this happening all around the world.
Okay, we spoke a lot about history in the 500 years of Château La Nerthe, but we also need to uphold tradition, but also look into the future as well. Maybe there is stubbornness, but you also need innovation as well going forward. How do you think Château La Nerthe will kind of balance both tradition, but also innovation with the younger generation?
I think the strength of ourselves is that we've been there forever. And the chateau as itself, but especially the family being in the industry for a long time, have this long-term vision constantly. They are not pressed on profitability and result. Yes, there is, but they know how we should do, and they are quite confident on their team on how to look for the future. And so, as a village, forced to follow some regulations, but then because we are in the wine distribution, we know our consumers, what they buy, and we sort of evolve with them as things go further. Mention Robert Parker time, since 2015, for instance, I think we've very much adapted our aging. And so when you look past Château La Nerthe, you taste before 15 our wines, you could tell it's a little bit old school, old style, you know, but that's part of what time was or like what taste was. It's a picture of history, what we're having.
Yeah.
And since then we evolved towards aging that preserve better maybe the fruit, the singularity of our wines. And so I think the family has been never looking for what the consumer really wants, but to just evolve throughout time as a whole. Yeah. Something more holistic than being, you know, demand driven.
So, Roman, obviously you're from the younger generation. Is there a younger generation coming through Château La Nerthe, Domaine Richard, that's coming through and giving fresh ideas on how to progress into the future?
Well, yes and no. If I talk about the consumers, of course, the people that comes to La Nerthe because we are a prestigious place, we are a prestigious also village. People that get there are already most of the time educated to our wines. It's like when you start reading, you're gonna start with the Little Prince from Saint-Exupéry when you're a kid, right?
Yeah.
Or even nowadays, very interesting, I guess, to read it again with your children. Yeah. But then you move towards your experience throughout readings. And I think that's the same with wine. And in the pyramid of wines, you have the Côte du Rhône to start with. And on top of that pyramid of the Rhône, you have Chateauneuf, where people come to us then in La Nerthe a little bit more educated. And then internally, I'm not part of the family, but I think it's quite good for both of us to combine and to come with my vision or my approach to wine to the family. And yes, I realized that there is a lot of things we could input. And so it's very motivating for me to share my thoughts about how we approach the market, how we communicate especially. For instance, this afternoon, someone out of a retail shop says, "So Richard, why are they not on your labels?" And I explain the approach is because the family is very, they're on the back labels, but they're not putting their own label, up front. They market and they highly respect the estate first. But maybe, one day it will be the time where the family wants to also establish their name as a wine company more than just the estate. So I think, things are evolving slowly but surely.
We talked about the winery. Do you think there's been a shift in the consumer as well, the younger generation?
There is a huge shift of consumer towards wine. My dad drinks wine every day. I don't drink wine every day. While I'm in this industry, I love wine. Don't get me wrong. But we don't have the same approach of alcoholic beverages as our peers and parents. Though I think wine is missing a big moment where we made wine a little bit overcomplicated in the message and intimidating. I mean, people are telling me, I don't know nothing about wine. I'm going to say something may be wrong, but you don't need to be a sexologist to be having to make love. But you do, right? So you don't need to be a professional of wine to drink wine. Yet people are intimidating when they are meeting with wine. When in the end, it's just a beverage. And I think it's because the whole message around it we've made is a little bit over complex.
My thought was, I think I recently seen reduced consumptions because people are connecting through social media rather than going to the bar and drinking a glass of wine and connecting that way.
Yes, but I'm pretty confident on the nature of ourselves as humans. If I just look at myself, I felt overwhelmed by social medias. And so last year I decided to remove all those social media, starting by Instagram, lately with Twitter. Well, I have only now, you might think, I'm boring, but I just have Strava to send pictures of my friends doing sports. And I have LinkedIn to connect for business. Then I have an Instagram that I use on my computer just for business. And then I wanted to concentrate my attention towards the essential, which is being here when we communicate with people. And I think because we are social animals, people will always need to go to a bar, to a coffee shop now that is trendy, to socialize. And this product is all about that, right? To connect with people and to also open connection and the herd of people. So I think this product will always be there. But we shall maybe be much or should be much better to be a little bit more consumer driven.
Yeah.
Not with Chateauneuf, but with the lower part of the pyramid.
Yeah. But what better way to connect than through a red Chateauneuf-du-Pape? So this is a 2017 Cuvée de Cadet Chateauneuf-du-Pape from Château La Nerthe. 2017, so that is 9 years now. Is that generally how it is aging-wise for Chateauneuf-du-Pape red?
Yes, for whites, I said you can enjoy them as young and fresh. Reds are definitely age-worthy wines, and the grape window, from my perspective, is from 8 to 12 years old. I'm never patient enough, though. But the great thing is that La Nerthe, we hold on in inventory, and we're releasing a 10 years old mature release from 15 last year to this year 2016. And yes, 17 is start being mature. You have those first evolved notes. And here also it's a highly allocated cuvée we're having. So we're talking about the consumers. This is the kind of, wine that you get when you're very into wine. That is coming from an old plot selection, 140 years old vineyards. The first that were planted post Phylloxera from Mr. Ducos, the second, part or generation of the people that went behind La Nerthe. And very old vineyards that deliver something different every year than the rest of the vineyards. Cuvée des Cadets.
15% alcohol, but you don't taste the alcohol.
Yeah.
Amazing wine. It just, for me, it coats the palate. It's got phenomenal length that keeps it going. It's got that kind of taste of that wooden cedar, but it has this kind of savory element to it as well. So, 2017, 9 years, but I can imagine just evolving again, 10, 15, 20 years.
A long time.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I'm going to go into some misconceptions about Chateauneuf-du-Pape and get your view on it.
Okay. I'm scared now. Although after a few wines, I'm feeling better.
So they always say that, especially around Chateauneuf-du-Pape red, that it's always big, heavy, and alcoholic. Do you think Chateauneuf-du-Pape's reputation for big, powerful wines is still accurate today?
No, when you look at Cuvée des Cadets and you taste and you're very surprised about the alcohol content, what we're observing is that if you follow phenolic maturity, yes, you have the 15% alcohol, but you have behind all the structure that can hold that alcohol and makes you feel that this wine is something great and that you don't taste in the end the alcohol. Though after a couple of glasses, you feel maybe a little buzz, but I think it's a sort of, we are better and better in trying to find the balance. And what we observe is that our grapes, they love the sun, they love the ripeness, so they love high sugar content. And so alcohol, not the more the alcohol is, the better the wine is, no, but Mediterranean climate grapes tend to like to be mature.
Yeah. Next one. Chateauneuf-du-Pape is just Grenache. True or false?
No, actually, Grenache is the king varietal, but it's the king that came from abroad. It's, well, I'm gonna disappoint the winemakers that are from the maybe this region, but Grenache came from Spain. It's called Garnacha. And so it's an important grape because of trade, because of its history and the profile. But I believe there is behind some other very interesting grapes.
Galets Roulés, which is those white pebbles, they make the wine. True or false?
They are a small part of it. They made it in people's mind, at least, a lot. Because when people hear about Chateauneuf, they saw a few pictures of those big rolled pebbles, and that's what they picture about.
So
I think it's a good marketing point, but to continue to say, it stores the heat during the day and keeps the heat for the night, no, that's something...
Small amount.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. It's only a red wine region.
What, red wine region?
Red wine region. I know we had the block there, but mostly. But you can see that for some growers, when they have the terroir as a whole, meaning first of all the soils and the location, you can make some great wines. But for sure, in 50 years' time, you will never see 50% of the production made of white because we don't have the terroir to make 50%. Maybe to make 8 to 10% as a whole in the village, yes, but not 50%. Yeah. Okay, next one. Chateauneuf-du-Pape is a bit old-fashioned.
When you look at La Nerthe and the style and the evolution and how we approach the wine, I don't think so. But of course, when you met with Châteauneuf-du-Pape, you're educated and you're not a 15 years old. Not saying that. Too young. It's illegal.
18, 19?
But I started drinking at that age. Oh, you're not going to start drinking Châteauneuf-du-Pape when you're 18 because you can just not afford it. Yeah. So you need to make your journey
Yeah.
towards it. It's something that you sort of deserve, or you need to understand. Yeah.
Next one, Chateauneuf-du-Pape, especially the red. It's only for aging.
No, but it's better when aged.
What was the sweet spot again for
12 years old, 8 years old.
8 to 12 years old. That's the misconceptions about Châteauneuf-du-Pape. We're going to wrap things up. Before we do that one is looking into the future. Where do you see Château La Nerthe? Where do you see Châteauneuf-du-Pape? Where do you see Domaine Richard going forward in the next 10, 20 years?
Well, I think that question should be answered by the Richard family directly.
But you must have a crystal ball as well, where you see it kind of going as well.
What I love is that behind the history of the estate, the history of the family should be put up front, this history, because that what people care about is the story behind. Yes, there is a long-standing history of the estate, but I think that's not enough today. And that we have such an interesting history of what's the family doing or has been doing that should be, put up front than just the estates. That would be, I think, something of great help. And in the, we are in 50 countries. We are quite well distributed. There is some hole, or we could always be better, but I think we're quite content with that. Yeah.
Okay. What's the one thing that excites you the most about the future?
I'm very curious to see how the French wine producers will adapt to those market changes, because the Europeans, the whole world we are very reluctant to change, and I think we've been kicked a little bit in the ass, since a few years by other countries that move very, very rapidly, and hopefully we'll step up again. And personally, I'm very, very motivated for that. I know that our wines will be highly respected around the world still, because we created those beautiful sanctuaries. But I'd like that we stay also a major pool in terms of volumes and production. And that's something I'm very not sure about, that will stay like this. So I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. So we do promote curiosity on the podcast, and there could be people now being curious about Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And where do I start? What's your advice to them wanting to kind of take this leap into Châteauneuf-du-Pape? Where do they start?
Go to your nearby wine store or wine shop, or to your nearby wine bar, and engage a discussion with the sommelier, the wine advisors, and engage a discussion of what you want and what you like, and start filling your guts. Open wines, don't be intimidated, and also, especially and more importantly, open it with the people you love, because that will only make the wine better.
Any last comments for our viewers and listeners?
Thank you very much. I don't know who's listening to me, but it was my first experience. It was fun to do that. Feel free to get lost in the south of France, everyone. We're quite welcoming there. Would be happy to welcome you at the winery. Even though we're on Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Mecca, south of France, Rhine, we welcome everyone. Everyone can come with an appointment or no, and we will be happy to have you with us, either in La Nerthe or across all our properties. Yeah.
Thank you, Roman Aujoulat, for joining us from Domaine Richard at Château La Nerthe. Go check out the wines at www.domainerichard.fr. We'll put the link in the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As we say here, drink more, try more, learn more. See you guys.
Cheers. Bye-bye.